In the first 3 episodes of this series, we learned that all 3 seasons would have a different outcome, and today we're going to break down the 1952 season to see what could possibly happen. In 1952, we would only have 5 full-time drivers: defending champion Fonty Flock, Herb Thomas, 2-time champion Lee Petty, Tim Flock, and Dick Rathman. In the opening 7 races, only 3 were won by contenders. Tim Flock would win the season opener at West Palm Beach, with Herb Thomas winning North Wilkesboro, and Dick Rathman winning the race at Martinsville. So after 7 races, the 1949 and 1950 champion Lee Petty would lead the standings by 112 points over Herb Thomas. At Macon, Lee Petty would finish 7th, while Herb Thomas would win the race and cut the gap down to 78 points. At Langhorne, Lee Petty would finish 3rd, while Thomas would finish 21st and would slip back to 3rd, 153 points behind. Defending champion Fonty Flock would move into 2nd, 110 points back. At Darlington, Lee Petty would finish 7th, while Fonty Flock would finish the race in 3rd and would cut the gap to 91 points. At Dayton, Petty would finish 4th, while Flock would finish 11th and would grow the gap to 121 points. At Canfield, Lee Petty would have an abysmal 23rd place finish, while Fonty Flock would finish 17th. It was now 4th, 103 points back. Tim Flock would move to 2nd, 85 points back, with a 4th place finish. Herb Thomas would win the race and was now 99 points back in 3rd. At Toledo, Lee Petty would have a solid 3rd place finish, while Tim Flock would go on and win the race, and after 14 races, we would have a 4-way battle for the championship. At Hillsboro, Petty would finish 6th, while Tim Flock would win and would shrink the gap to 40 points. At Charlotte, Petty would finish 4th, while Flock would finish 2nd, and would close the gap to 30 points. At Detroit, Lee Petty would lose the lead with a 32nd place finish, while Tim Flock would win the race and take the point lead by 76 points over Petty. At Niagara Falls, Tim Flock would finish 13th, while Petty would finish 16th, and Petty was now 3rd, 85 points back. Herb Thomas would move into 2nd with a 2nd place finish. It was now 48 points behind. At Tioga, Tim Flock would win, while Thomas would finish 2nd and slightly increase the gap to 53 points. At Monroe, we would have the exact same result and the gap would grow to 58 points. At Morristown, Thomas would finish 24th. It was now 137 points back in 3rd, while Tim Flock would finish 2nd, and Lee Petty would move to 2nd in the standings, 105 points back. At South Bend, Flock would win the race, while Petty would finish 2nd and would grow the gap to 120 points. At Rochester, Flock would win again, while Petty would finish 4th. It was now 140 points back. At Weaverville, Petty would not participate, while Flock would finish 2nd and grew the gap to a whopping 310 points. At the Southern 500, Lee Petty would finish 6th, while Flock would finish 33rd and would shrink the gap to 232 points. At Macon, Lee Petty would win again, while Flock finished 3rd. It was now 227 points back. At Langhorne, Petty would win again, while Flock would finish 4th, decreasing the gap to 212 points. At Dayton, Flock would finish 6th, while Petty would finish 2nd, and with 6 races left, it would take nothing short of a miracle for Petty to overtake Flock. At Wilson, Petty would finish 2nd, while Flock would finish 7th, and would shrink the gap to 163 points. At Hillsboro, Flock would finish 4th and Petty 5th, growing the gap to 168 points. At Martinsville, Petty would finish 3rd and Flock 4th, and shrunk the gap to 163 points. At North Wilkesboro, Flock would finish 4th, while Petty would finish 13th and would grow the gap to 199 points. In the penultimate race of the season at Atlanta, Petty needed a miracle, and even with a 2nd place finish, Tim Flock would finish 4th, and the gap was now down to 184 points. All Flock had to do was finish 83rd. But with the field size only being 19 cars in the finale, Flock would win the championship a week early, and would cap off his championship winning season with a 12th place finish. So either way, Tim Flock would claim the 1952 season, and this is actually the first season where the real-life champion is the same as our timeline of champions. Tim Flock was just simply better than everybody else, and he would beat a 2-time champion in our timeline, and was so dominant that he was able to lock up the title a week early. Well, that'll do it for today, guys. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next week for 1953.